Sarah Atkins is absent, excused, I suppose. Paul, the first item is the consideration of Public Works Committee minutes from July 22nd. Do you have any comments to make?
They looked good to me.
Great.
So I would motion to approve.
And I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved. Are there any public comments on items that are not on the agenda? Any public comments? Any public comments? Moving on, unfinished business. Presentation by SEH of the sidewalk inventory and pedestrian ramp assessment.
I'll take this one, Jim. This is, we have Dave Schofield and Sarah Artoon here from SEH. They were instrumental in completing the sidewalk inventory and pedestrian ramp assessment that we originally contracted with them earlier this spring. Sarah was lucky enough to walk our 38 miles of sidewalks in the city here, and they have compiled all the data and report, and Dave is here to kind of present on that, what they found, and answer any questions that we would have and how we're going to use this moving forward. So, Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have a copy of this in your packet. We were looking at a number of things. So I kind of broke this into three parts. The first is the sidewalk assessment. The second is the ramp assessment. And then there's some discussion of how do we make our crosswalks and kind of ancillary things a little bit more user-friendly. So the sidewalk assessment is the areas kind of mid-block we're talking about. So we've got our 4 or 5 foot sidewalk alongside of the roadway. What is the condition of it? And so we looked at a number of things. In older parts of town, there are some sections that are narrower. 5 feet is fairly comfortable for 2 people to walk shoulder to shoulder and walk up and down the street. 4 feet is common in older areas. You kind of have to walk in a line. And then you'll get into some areas that are 3 feet or less. And, not real common, but it does sometimes happen. So that width is, the deficient width is one of the things we looked at. We looked at tripping hazards, and we kind of broke them into 3 levels. We looked at a 1/4 inch deflection or less, which I think we'd all agree is probably pretty tight. A 1/4 inch, or that's not something that you could theoretically trip yourself on it, but I think a lot of us have the ability to get over, 1/4 inch or less. Yep. But even just a piece of sidewalk, you've got pits and stones. I mean, it's not that a sidewalk is perfectly flat across even just a regular non-broken stone. There's always some variation. That's what gives it grip, and when you've got some ice on it. Level 2, we went from a 1/4 inch to 1.5 inches. So I think 1.5 inches is reasonably that you can expect that someone might trip on that and injure themselves. And a level 3 was greater than 1.5 inches. So those are the big ones that even a 9-year-old kid should be watching out for. So that was kind of we did that level. So level 1 is the least hazardous. Level 3 is the most hazardous. Cross slope. So as you're walking along the sidewalk, a cross slope is kind of across your body. 2% or less is what ADA requires. You get into some areas where you'll go more than 2%, either at a driveway or if there's a steep slope. They were trying to, at some point, avoid taking a property behind the sidewalk or something like that. Or the sidewalk is just settled. I mean, there's some cases where it was built at 2% and it's settled a little bit. We looked at gaps in the sidewalk, so sections where, for whatever reason, maybe a house burned down and the sidewalk was removed as part of the driveway removal, but it was never put back. So we looked at some of those areas. We didn't look at gaps as though, we'd really like to have a sidewalk from Vine Street to Crestview along Carmichael. That's not a deficient gap. I mean, that's a section of the system that hasn't been constructed yet. We're looking at sections that are, a property or two kind of thing, where it's a gap in the system. You're going to want to address that, but it's not necessarily something where it just has never been built there. Deficient steps, there are a number of areas where there's steps in your sidewalk. The one that jumps to my mind is at the corner of River Street and Second. So right as you dive to go under the railroad bridge as you're going northbound, there's a set of steps on the right side. That was done because there were some retaining walls there, and they were trying to avoid, I'm sure, 25 years ago, they were trying to avoid having to replace a retaining wall at a cost of $10,000, so they put steps in. Well, steps aren't terribly traversable by people with certain handicaps or someone with a stroller or something like that. So areas where we can get rid of steps. Now, there are certain instances where steps are totally appropriate, where you have another route and you have steps. It's not that we have to get rid of all steps in town. It's just that there has to be an alternate route. So we try to avoid those areas where it's all funneled to a set of steps. Drop-offs, there's some areas where if you had a sidewalk and then there was a 2-foot drop-off right next to the sidewalk and there was no handrail, something like that, we called that a deficiency. And then we had an other category, and Sarah can maybe fill in on what those might be as we get into it here. So in the report, we have a couple of pictures. This, and I don't know if I can zoom in here, but I probably can.
They got it in front of them too, Dave.
Okay. So that's an example of a level 3 tripping hazard. I think it's worth noting that your sidewalks are probably taking about as much brunt as anything that's in your system. Your streets obviously have snow plows and vehicles and salt and all those sort of things that are bearing on them, and they've been maintained over the years. Your sidewalks get a lot of abuse too. You have people that are icing their sidewalks pretty aggressively. You have, in some cases, where a driveway was built across the sidewalk and maybe it's only a 3-inch concrete sidewalk. It's not surprising that would break down over time to have a bunch of vehicle traffic going across the sidewalk. I think it's probably pretty common. The other thing you have, and I think this is a good example of it, is you have trees. You have boulevard trees, and everyone loves boulevard trees, and so do I. But in situations where you have a sidewalk directly adjacent to a tree, you very commonly have roots that will get just below the grass level and just kind of spread out. And you'll see that on your curb and gutter also, where it starts to tent, I call it tent the curb and gutter, tent the sidewalk, where that root is pushing that up. And so I wouldn't say that all of them, I think that's unfair, but a lot of the major tripping hazards that you have are either current tree related or trees that are no longer around for whatever reason. It started with that tree kind of pushing it up. So in this instance, in the example here, you can see that tree root is under the sidewalk and it's forcing it up, and it kind of creates a little bit of a tent. At that point, there are certain things that you can do to address that, but you really need to start thinking about, do we take this tree out? Because otherwise it's going to continue to happen. So we looked at, as Mike mentioned, Sarah walked all 38 plus miles of your system, and we came up with approximately 3,000 deficiencies. As you can see, the tripping hazards were a good majority of them. I think it was something like 50, I have the percentage here.
Did you count driveways?
We did not count the apron part of the driveway. That's not a walking surface. That's a driving surface. So we didn't look at those areas. We counted those, yes. Yep.
That's
So
like 60%.
Yeah,
so
something
it's well
like
over
that.
50%.
Yep. So as you look at those, obviously that tripping hazard, and I will say this is not at all uncommon. This is what I would expect to see in an established community that has older sidewalks in certain areas of town. Tripping hazards are one of the things that as that concrete ages, it starts to deteriorate, and it breaks up into smaller panels than what we want. We want 5x5 panels with contraction joints. A lot of these are where those joints have separated, but some of them are where it's just started to fail, and the sidewalk has deteriorated. It's broken up into smaller panels. So in correcting sidewalk deficiencies, and this is obviously a very short narrative, and as you get into capital improvement plans for addressing sidewalk deficiencies, you'll certainly find that there is no one magic bullet, but there are a number of things, and I'm going to use tripping hazards as the obvious one. So if you have a small tripping hazard and it's a situation that you don't think it's going to get worse, either there's not a tree, there's not an obvious cause where you can see the movement happening, there are ways to mud jack that panel. So you actually inject a pressurized grout underneath it to actually lift a panel up. You can actually, for lack of a better term, you can kind of sand down the ridges so that you can get rid of that tripping hazard. Those sort of things work for what I would consider to be minor deficiencies. If you have a sidewalk that has 85 cracks in a 2-block area, or 85 tripping hazards in a 2-block area, going in and mud jacking every one of those and planing off the protruding edge isn't probably what you'd want to do. But if you have an area where you have, and we'll get to the maps in a little while, where you have, 1 or 2 tripping hazards in a block, well, that might be something that would make sense to bring in a company to do that sort of thing on kind of on a spot basis sort of thing. As you look at some of the other things, the cross slopes, the width, the steps, most of those you're really looking at doing a wholesale replacement. And I usually say that if you're not replacing a full block, you're probably causing yourself more effort than it's worth, because in order to get in and replace 12 panels, you have to avoid the other 45 panels that you're not removing. And that sometimes it's so much more effort than it seems like it would be. So in some of these other deficiencies, you're really looking at kind of block length removal and replacement type things.
Did
So
you grade walls that hang into the sidewalk or fences that are right on the sidewalk that really aren't honoring the easement?
no, we did not. And there are a number of areas. The other one would be an example of that, would be if they've got an overhanging shrub or something like that. We did not look at things that are encroaching in that right of way. So another example of that might be if you have a number of street signs and you narrow because of the street signs, would be another thing that conceivably could narrow the traveled way. So we did not look at those. We were looking at more at.
A child run into a fence that was right on the sidewalk line 2 or 3 years ago, and they were on.
Sure.
So that is a
Yeah, and I have seen where if you're looking at encroachments, it very quickly becomes difficult, because we know where our sidewalk is, but we don't necessarily know where that property line is, and we don't know who actually built the retaining wall that encroaches. Sometimes those are city projects, and so if we go to that property owner and say, you need to take care of this, and it wasn't there. Oops.
sometimes it's a highways project.
Right, yep. So the second part of this, hopefully it comes up, is the curb ramp assessment. So let's say you're walking down along the city hall here, your curb ramp is what actually touches the curb and gutter at the edges. In the olden days, and I'll say this probably prior to ADA, what you did is you built sidewalk to the back of curb, and people walked and stepped down 6 inches and went across the road and stepped back up 6 inches and went away. That blocks a lot of people for using it. Not that bikes are a primary use of your sidewalks, but people do use them on your sidewalks. That obviously causes problems. Handicap folks that are in a wheelchair that can't make that 6 inch. Well, the fall is not so much a problem, but getting up on the other side is a problem. If you have somebody with limited mobility, that 6 inch drop can be a long ways, and that's uncomfortable for some people, and you don't want them with moving quickly as they hit that 6 inch drop. So we looked at the curb ramps kind of separately from the sidewalks. We looked at 4 levels, and we actually did a level 0, because I think it's worth noting that you have you have a tremendous number of ramps that are in compliance. I'll use Vine Street. The stuff that's been done over the last 5 years is excellent. The folks that have been doing that for you have done an excellent job of making sure that they meet all the criteria for the ADA. So talked about the cross slope and the sidewalks. So when you're looking at a curb ramp, in addition to the cross slope issue, the 2% cross slope, you also have a running slope. So as I'm walking in one direction, that has to be 8% or less. It's actually 8.3% or less, but I'd call it 8%. So the running distance is 8% or less. The cross slope is again the 2% that we talked about. The ramp at the opening has to be 36 inches or wider. You have to have what are called detectable warning fields, and you'll see those all over the place. Nowadays they're almost all cast iron, and they're made by Neenah, same as your inlet castings and manhole castings, and they're actually depressed into the sidewalk. There was a period there from approximately 2005 to 2010 where there was a number of other materials that were used, stainless steel with some sort of coating on them. There's some areas where they did a concrete stamp, so the actual concrete itself has the truncated domes in it. I personally installed some of those other products, and I'm very happy to now have a product that works very well. The cast iron ones are significantly better than any of those other situations.
Could you describe the recommended crosswalk? Is it straight across to this one right away or crossway? Is it one of these curvy things that kind of directs ADA and bicycles?
Yeah. If you can, we do have a section about the crosswalks themselves, and I can jump into that a little bit later. But generally speaking, to address your point, hopefully not all of it, but some of it, the detectable warning fields are intended to provide someone with limited eyesight the ability to get themselves in line with where they're going. So they can feel it with their cane, they can feel it with their feet, and they can kind of get themselves oriented with where they're supposed to be going. So they know they're entering traffic, they know where they're supposed to go. And so very particularly, you'll have the panels in specific directions. What you mentioned, there are some areas where you have a ramp in the middle of a radius, where you have one ramp serving two crosswalks. And those are problematic because you can't do that now. You know you're entering traffic, but you can't get yourself lined up because in a lot of cases, they can't see that kind of scalloped white line that's right ahead of you. So theoretically, those domes are telling you to walk straight across the middle of the intersection, which is obviously not a good place to be. So a lot of states have been trying to shy away from those mid-radius crosswalks. Now, there are certain situations where if you have a short enough radius, if your buildings are built very close to the right-of-way line, to put the crosswalks back at the end radius can put you in an even worse situation, because now you're like downtown, let's say, for instance. If we put those crosswalks back at the end radius, sometimes that is behind the building line, in which case someone who's coming down 2nd Street and wants to turn right isn't going to see that pedestrian as well as they would if they were brought towards the center line a little bit. So it's not that they should never be used, but you just need to know that it is not necessarily the best situation to have them at the mid-radius.
Is there any specification about width of the crosswalk entrance versus the width of the sidewalk? I'm aware of a few where the neck's down significantly.
Yep.
From the actual sidewalk width.
I think as long as you have that 36 inches, I think you meet ADA. I have always tried to match my crosswalk with what is approaching it so that you don't have two people trying to get into the same spot.
I think he's talking about the landing area on top of the ped ramp.
No, just the curb width itself, where
Oh.
where the entrance is actually narrower than the
Sure.
walk itself by
Yep.
a foot probably.
Oh, really? Okay.
So,
Yeah, well, and that's actually pretty common. I mean, The actual detectable warning fields are 4 feet. They're 2-foot sections, and you do 2 of them in a regular sidewalk. And your sidewalks are almost all 5 feet.
Right.
So it's very common to go from 5 feet to 4 feet. In fact, probably 90% of them are that way, just because that matches the fields that you have. What you don't have is a opening in your curb that doesn't have a detectable warning field on it. That's almost worse in some situations. But let's say you had a 12-foot bike lane. I think you would want a 12-foot pedestrian ramp there. So, and then the transitions at the bottom and the top of the ramp have to be free from above level changes. So if you've got some curbs, let's say you have a mountable curb in a subdivision, and that mountable curb has a 3-inch or a 4-inch head on it. Even though that's mountable, even though you can drive a car over it, you wouldn't necessarily want to have that on a handicap ramp. So so a lot of developers will use mountable curb because they don't have to necessarily put their driveway openings all in at the start. But you still have to do special ramps in a mountable curb so that you don't have at the bottom of it still have that transition. All right. So there's a couple of pictures here. The first one is a detectable warning field with a ramp with adequate bottom width, adequate running slope, that sort of thing. The second one, figure 3, is an example of what you saw from probably 1970 until 2005, where they just imprinted a knurled plate into the concrete, and so you have a little bit of slip resistance. That's very common. You'll see those all over town. That was the standard at the time. It is no longer.
Have you seen any of those retrofitted with the cast iron truncated domes or not? Typically?
I have not seen that.
Because I know the truncated domes are typically set when the concrete is curing.
Right, and they actually that dome is actually, the whole panel is probably 2 inches thick. There were, right, as I mentioned, from 2005 to 2010, there was all these products, and there was a number of them that said, oh, just put down some PL adhesive and slap these rubber things on there, and you'll be good. And then, the first winter they all popped off, of course, not surprisingly. So it's difficult to retrofit a curb ramp without physically replacing that apron.
Okay.
And then figure 4 is an example of a curb ramp, and it's a little harder to show the running slope, but this was a steep ramp that comes down and is narrower than 36 inches wide. There are a number of these in the older area of town. And then there are some that just there's no ramp at all. It's just the sidewalk goes up against back a curb. So you had approximately 1,300 curb ramps in town. 750 or 57% of those have at least one deficiency. A lot of those, as you can imagine, you've been replacing sidewalks over time. A lot of those lack the detectable warning fields that are relatively new requirement. So level 1, those are mostly they just lack a detectable warning field. So that was a good chunk of them. Level 2s and 3s, you have approximately 200 that are too narrow, too steep, all of the above. They are not a good situation. I would think, and Mike mentioned where you would start, I would think that some of those level 3 handicap ramps would be perfect ones to start at. Those are very obvious. People will appreciate improvements that go from not at all traversable in a wheelchair to a safe situation. So I think if we're talking about low-hanging fruit, I think that those level 3 curb ramps are a good example.
Did you take a look at track crosswalks where there's a sidewalk and a crosswalk and nothing on the other side of the street?
Yes, we actually did missing crosswalks.
There's one on Wisconsin Street.
Yeah, there's a number of them around where they're. Now there's some examples, and I'll get to that in the maps. There's some examples where we said there was a missing crosswalk. Some of the newer areas of town where there was like a T intersection, and there wasn't a crosswalk on the other side, but there was a driveway on the other side. That's technically a missing ramp. There's no warning panels there, but it'd be a little tough to add that in. I mean, it's a little hard to say we're going to take that driveway out and add a crosswalk. I think some people are a pedestrian ramp. That would be difficult. I'm thinking north of Hanley, east of New 35, that subdivision there is one I'm thinking of. On the south side, there's a number of T intersections that there's crosswalks on the north side that funnel them to the south, but then there's nothing on the south because there's driveways, every 50 feet through there. So.
There's stuff on North Second Street too.
Yep, there's a number of areas like that. So as we talked about the curve ramps, most of those are generally situations where you have to replace the curb ramp. I think it's worth noting there are some cases where it's not just the curb ramp. You also have to address the upper landing, and you have to address the sidewalks that come to that upper landing. So, you can imagine a situation where if you have two steep curb ramps and then relatively level sidewalks in both directions, that upper landing where the two ramps are pointing to, that upper landing has to come down, and then you have to slope up in either direction. Sometimes you have to end up with a retaining wall in that location. So there are some that get very complex very quickly to try to comply with all of the various cross slopes, running slopes. Some of the worst ones, and why I'm as impressed as I am with Vine Street, some of the worst ones are the side hill roadways, where a 2% cross slope on the side street is relatively easy to do, but then to try to get all your running slopes on the going up and down the hill proves problematic. So there are some situations where you just can't meet all of the various requirements. So if we look at all the deficiencies, both sidewalk deficiencies and curb ramp deficiencies, we have approximately 3,800 deficiencies in your system. I don't have any specific numerical evidence for this, but I think that's pretty common. I think there are a lot of communities that have a lot of deficiencies that they are attempting to address over time. I would say that in most cases, the things that were built met the code of the time. There was a time where detective warning fields weren't required. There was a time that handicap ramps weren't, I can't say desired, but weren't a required thing. So it's not uncommon that you are playing a little bit of catch up. You're
concerned that the number doesn't include the number of walls that actually interfere with walking and riding bikes on the sidewalks. I do ride bikes on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Or fences or shrubs that are right up to the sidewalk or actually going over the sidewalk.
Yep.
Because those are definite issues. And I think in some cases with Highway 35, improvement that's going to go through, I think they put in a lot of walls along Highway 35 to be able to do it. And so I think it's a good time to fix those walls because they're going to come down.
Yeah, I would caution that jumping into the retaining walls is, they're there, but they also get, if you have a 12-foot retaining wall that is a house 12 feet from it, it's not as easy as just replacing that retaining wall. You've got a major excavation and a shoring type situation.
No one said it was easy, but
Yeah.
but it's obvious that they're going to start falling down.
So we talked about the ramps, we talked about the sidewalks, crosswalks. So there's a number of things with the crosswalks. I'm going to go to, so there are a number of, is it Maryland? There are a number of crosswalks that we just don't have crosswalk markings in certain areas. The refreshing the paint on an annual basis proves problematic. So there are some areas where you wouldn't have a crosswalk even marked. There's still a crosswalk there. People are permitted to cross the street at that point. You're not required to have crosswalk markings in every case. But there are certain areas where you want to make sure that people understand that they are in an area where the pedestrians can be. And there are a number of ways to show that. I'm sure you've all seen there's a viral picture that goes around that has kind of a three-dimensional appearance where it looks like the crosswalk is popping out of the roadway from certain directions. There are things that you can do to kind of enhance the visibility of the crosswalk. We put in a couple of examples in here in the report. You are not required to paint every crosswalk in town. I just want to make that clear. That's not a requirement.
That's by state law, is that what you're saying? Or what's that?
There are certain, state law does not require painting crosswalks. In a situation where you have multiple lanes of traffic and you have a crosswalk that you want to bring attention to, you ought to paint it in accordance with the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Devices. But you're not required to, every minor crosswalk in a residential area is not required to have two pieces of paint on either side of it.
Right.
It's still a legal crosswalk. It's still
Having
pedestrian,
said
still
that,
has a right of way.
Isn't that a traffic calming device?
It is, absolutely. Yep. Crosswalks are a traffic calming device. I think you have to look at and make sure that your budget matches your need for some of those things. And I think you can certainly, if you want to paint every crosswalk, absolutely have at her. But in certain situations, it just doesn't financially make sense, because once you paint it, you're never going to get rid of it. And so there's going to be that expectation of replacing it every time.
If we want to paint every crosswalk, we have to increase the budget by like $40,000 to do that.
We have that's one of the issues where we need policies. And another one of the ones where we don't have a particular policy around that, so we'll be developing another one on the list, right?
With the crosswalks then, in a situation where you have a traffic signal, well, I'm going to do it slightly different. So let's say you have a situation where you have a high volume of traffic that you don't have a traffic signal at. A good example is at Diamond Path. You have a high volume of traffic or pedestrian movements that go across Diamond Path. In that location, you don't have enough traffic.
Diamond and Vine?
Diamond and Vine, yes.
Diamond and Vine.
Is it Diamond Path or am I adding path to it?
Diamond and Vine, by
Diamond
the
and
Y.
Yeah, by the way, there you go.
That's a situation where you have a number of pedestrian movements that are going across the roadway, but you don't have enough cross-street traffic that you wanted to put a traffic light in, for instance. So you have that kind of middle area where you want to protect that crosswalk a little bit better, but you don't want to stop every car on Vine that goes through there.
We used to have a stop sign there.
Yep. You chose to put in a rapid rectangular flashing beacon in that location. It's a pedestrian push button. It brings attention to, it's not a control device, it's a warning. And so it brings the driver's attention to someone in the crosswalk. You can technically, even if someone presses the button, a driver can drive through that, especially after the pedestrian has moved on. The driver can drive through that. You cannot get a ticket for ignoring a warning device. You can get a ticket for ignoring the pedestrian that's in the crosswalk. So I know that seems like a strange argument to make, but it's not a traffic control feature, it's a traffic warning feature. Yeah. The rapid rectangular flashing beacon is a fantastic piece of technology that works significantly better than the old style. The old style was, I'm going to put a flashing yellow light that flashes 24 hours a day, and once drivers drive by it 3 times, they totally ignore it forevermore because they've seen it flashing. The RRFB, it's a push button, so when it's flashing, there is someone in that crosswalk. And so I think that's an excellent piece of technology because it brings people's attention to the person that wants to cross, and you see that pedestrian. Some of the always on type things, or I've even seen people kind of ruin the RRFBs and put them in a continual flashing situation. My opinion is that defeats the entire purpose of that device, because once you see it flashing and there's no one there, you're going to ignore it after that. So the RFB is is an excellent product for situations where you don't want to control traffic. You want to slow the traffic down. You want to bring attention to the residents that are or the pedestrians that are in the crosswalk. There are things called hawks. I don't remember the acronym, but it's a traffic signal that only operates during pedestrian crossings. It's a situation that you would put at a mid-block kind of a crosswalk. It's generally not used at intersections, and it actually is a red light. They press a button and the red light flashes and then turns red, and that is actually a control device where the cars have to stop for that device. So that's a little different than an RFB. Those generally aren't used with side road intersections because when the main line stops walking or stops driving, the side road guys will jut out and can cause even more problems sometimes. So in a situation where you have a side road, you really ought to go to a full signalization. Once you have a signal, you can do extended walk periods that allow people to have someone who's walking slowly has the time to get across that in that walk signal. You can have push buttons so that you don't have the walk phases when there's not someone there. So I think you've probably seen a lot of those signalization things. The thing that we've seen increase recently is accessible signals. So, for instance, if I walk up to a crosswalk, I can see a white guy or a red hand saying no, don't cross. If I'm not, my visual acuity isn't good enough to either see that hand or not see it at all, they now have signals that have a push button that has, it'll have like a kind of a chirp to bring people with visual issues to the signal. They can push a button and then it audibly says, wait, cross. That kind of thing. Those are excellent for trying to get people that are missing eyesight to be able to cross those roadways. Obviously, replacing every signal in town with that, there's a cost to that. Obviously, it's not just a little push button. You have to have it all tied in with your system. There are different things. There are some areas that have had a lot of complaints about them because imagine if you own a coffee shop that has an open door and there's a chirping at all times and then a wait at all times. There are some complaints about that. I don't know. I don't know if I'd put a whole lot of weight into that sort of thing. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to deal with, but you will get some complaints about stuff like that. So that accessible signal design is something that in even just the last 3 years is becoming a lot more prevalent. So.
If you have one of those, if you have an accessible signal, does it have all directions? Just one thing.
You end up with 8 devices, one on either side of all 4 quadrants. So that's one where you really couldn't do that one with a mid-block as you're going with it. The mid-block crosswalks would be difficult on that sort of thing. So, but you'll see a lot. You will see that more frequently coming up in the next several years. That is not at this point is not required. It is a thing that is. It wouldn't surprise me if it becomes required in the next 3 to 4 years, but at this point it is not required. So.
Sorry, well, I missed that. What's
the
mid-block?
accessible signals?
Oh, accessible. Okay.
Yeah, those are not required at this point, but they are. I would say a majority of them that are being installed at this point are starting to have that sort of thing.
I think they'd be a good thing for the city to have, just one.
So I've talked a lot. Now I want to show pictures. Appendix A is your sidewalk system. We took your Parks and Trails map and doctored it up with the newer sidewalks that have been constructed since that date. Deficiencies. So one of the things that Mike and I talked about before the meeting here is we'll probably end up revising this map and showing multiple ones so you can see each deficiency separately and then bring them all together. But, so I think it's worth noting there's a lot of color on this map. But you also have to realize that each one of these dots is about 70 feet wide, so it looks worse than it is. But each of these is a deficiency that we noted. I'm going to use an example of tripping hazard level 3. That's kind of the golden color there. You can see you have a number of them in the downtown area. That's also zoomed in on the right side of the map there. You have some of them up. If you can see my cursor here, but you have a number of them up in this region right here. I don't even know what road that is, east of
Grandview?
might be the extension of Grandview to the north.
Yep.
So you have I'm sorry, that's tripping, we're on the sidewalk deficiency, so that's tripping hazard. So you can see you have some areas where you have clusters, and it's not surprising. I would anticipate that your sidewalks, as they deteriorate, are gonna deteriorate at about the same rate as the other sidewalks that were installed about that same era. And so some of the things at the north end of Grandview, I'm sure those were all installed at the same time. I know that neighborhood a little bit. I'm sure there are some boulevard trees that were installed in that area.
Yeah, narrow boulevards too.
Right.
Three,
Yeah.
3 to 4 feet of boulevard and
Right, exactly.
a 2-foot tree.
So it doesn't surprise me that you see clusters. That's not surprising. In some ways, that's better than having them all kind of just uniformly spread out in the entire city, because you can kind of focus your efforts as you go forward on trying to address some of those areas. It also doesn't surprise me that we see a lot more color in the older part of town. Part of that's just older. Part of it is that there was a time when sidewalks were a lot more prevalent. If you look on the area that's southeast of us right now, so up on top of the hill, you've got a number of areas that just don't have sidewalks. So it's hard to have deficiencies in sidewalk that doesn't exist. Doesn't mean it's better. It certainly doesn't mean it's better, but it just it can't fail if it doesn't exist. So there's some areas like that are, the 60s to 90s range where sidewalks weren't as prevalent to be built, and so some of those.
That's Paul's neighborhood. You have no sidewalks by you. None.
Some of those kind of, what would the mid-century modern? I don't know if that's the right term, but that later era they just don't have sidewalks at all, and so looks great on this map. Not so great if you're trying to walk it.
So what's great about this is this is just a map here, but all this data is collected and is in a GIS program now. So the city owns that data, and now we're able to go in there and we can click on attributes and identify. I'll be able to click on a button that says just show me the level 3s sidewalks, and it'll just show me the level 3s, and we can kind of create our budget and our plan moving forward based upon the clusters, downtown area, But this is really, this is what we're looking for, from a planning perspective, just to get an idea. And we can discuss in the future here over the winter how we want to approach the next season and what sidewalks we want to address. But at least we're able to, and I don't know if David, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but if each one of these dots, is there attributes associated with that dot as far as like length or not?
No. So let's say using tripping hazard as an example.
Yeah.
Sarah shot the actual hazard itself.
Point. Okay. So I'll be, how we decide, we'll be able to go out in the field, to these areas, snap photos, and then we can link the photos to our GIS when we're bidding the document. The contractor can see it online. They don't have to come and visit the site. So this is a great tool for the city as we move forward with sidewalk replacement repair program.
There are a couple stretches where, let's say there's a gap in the sidewalk that was 10 feet long. Instead of shooting like every so many feet. I just shot at both ends and said gap begins and gap ends. So there
Okay.
are a few of those sections, but there's not a lot.
Okay.
Curb ramp deficiencies, so this map, I made the decision to include the ramps that were in good shape, which I think kind of shows you some of the areas that have sidewalks. You know, the other map just showed if there was no deficiency there, it looked great. Well, this map actually shows kind of where your sidewalks are. You can see there are certainly in the older part of town, you have a lot more level 3 ramp missing type things, level 2 multiple deficiencies. Those are in the older part of town, and I don't think that's, I think that's pretty, I think everyone would anticipate that that's what we would have found. There are some areas out in, let's say, Heritage Greens where we have some deficiencies. A lot of those are probably the lack of detectable warning fields, that sort of thing. So there's some newer areas on here.
A lot of concrete up there.
Yeah,
A lot of
and those have
concrete stamping
you have a
out
lot
there.
more sidewalks out there, so I think that's, I mean, I wouldn't see having these as a badge of shame. There are some of these that it's better to have a bad ramp than no sidewalk at all, kind of a thing. But I think these are certainly, as you start to address things, some of those level 3s and level 2s are going to be really low-hanging fruit that you can pick off relatively
That's where we
easily.
start integrating the traffic volume and the pedestrian volume and the condition,
Yes.
and use
Yeah.
those as a
And I think,
prioritize.
you know, look at sidewalks and you find those ramps that are butting bad sidewalks, and it's a perfect opportunity just to do everything all, you know, at one time, and like I said, low-hanging fruit. So, yeah, it's good information.
Yep.
Very good data.
I think that was it. So I talked probably 20 or 30 minutes longer than Mike anticipated.
Do
I'm
you-
good at that. If you guys have questions, I'd love to answer.
Yeah, I know, well, Jim, I'm probably gonna beat you to the punch here, but, trails, were you able to walk any of the trails?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
But that's not
including-
that's not in the report?
It is in the report. We just kind of merged them together.
Okay,
There are some private trails that we did not walk. For instance, Red Cedar Canyon, they have a private trail system down into the actual canyon that we did not
okay.
inspect those.
Very nice.
Yeah, Sarah actually came and it was underwater multiple times with the riverfront trails. She actually came back after the water level dropped and came and got some of those.
Yeah.
So
But the
that's-
same type of deficiencies you looked at, you weren't looking at like a pacer rating,
We were not looking at a pacer
you were
rating,
looking
no.
at deficiencies,
Correct.
cracks, so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah, on an asphalt trail, you're gonna see a lot more deformation.
Yeah,
You're gonna lose your oil and have a lot more exposed aggregate, that sort of thing.
yeah,
That's something that obviously needs to be addressed as a maintenance thing, but it's not a tripping hazard per se.
right, okay.
I'm surprised at 67,000 feet of trails.
Yeah, we're right. That's what we're relying on.
Yeah, there was, well, I mean, I guess the one that, Carmichael Road is probably the biggest one. I mean, you have trail all the way from, what's the name of the road that goes into the dog track?
Sacred Meadows? What's the name of the road?
Yeah.
Albert Street?
What's the
Oh,
one?
okay,
Yeah,
sure.
you have trail all the way from there to past,
Mayor,
Um,
past-
right
almost
by
to Mayor.
The Holiday Inn.
the Holiday Inn there. You know, that obviously
Hillcrest.
adds up pretty quickly, so,
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, that's a good chunk of it. And then
Construction dog track to where?
Hillcrest.
on the
Culvers.
west side of Carmichael, that's all a wider.
Albert
asphalt.
Street to Culvers.
Culvers, there's a path from Culvers.
Yeah, in front of Culvers there, right up to the edge of the old golf
Oh,
course.
no one ever rides on that
Yeah,
kind of.
but it's there though.
It's there.
It's because it's a death trap on the other side.
Sign on there because they have to cross the highway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, thanks for the information, Dave, and
Thank you.
Sarah, thanks for walking it too, appreciate that.
We should have included the overhanging walls. And trees and bushes and fences, because as a person who has biked and walked along those things more than once,
Mhm.
I find them unpleasant
Yeah.
and dangerous.
Mhm.
You, I did most of the presenting, but what is your policy for bike riding on sidewalks? Do you allow it? And
They have to. That's where we're not.
Not permitted downtown. I
Right.
don't know this, I've never figured out the ordinance, is it specifically, because in Wisconsin, as I remember, you have to specifically permit it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not permitted under Wisconsin law to ride a bike on a sidewalk.
Right.
As I
But that's by the town
But
choice.
then,
Jim.
but then,
Each city makes
I
its own
said
decision.
we have to permit that, and I don't know that we have.
Well,
I know it's not permitted
As far as
downtown.
I am concerned, you have, because that's where I ride, and that's where most of the people I see riding bikes ride. So if someone's permitted it someplace online.
I
I think that one is a pretty common overlook. I mean, I'm sure that there are certain ordinances that the police don't take a aggressive stance on, and that's
Right.
probably one that I think most communities do prohibit bikes on sidewalks. I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone actually getting a ticket for that.
Yeah, if you want to get us off the sidewalks, then you could just eliminate biking off.
Now, downtown is a little different story. You wouldn't necessarily want someone on a bike zipping by at 15 miles an hour and someone opening a door and running right into them.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Sarah, for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
Will we be able to separate out the trail information?
Will we be able to
Look at that.
separate the trail information?
Yeah, look at that, 'cause that's a separate entity for both this and the bike ped committee.
Mm-hmm. I think when we get the GIS data, I mean, if we click on level 3, I mean, a level 3 trail is gonna show up just on the sidewalk map. So basically, they incorporated the trails with the sidewalk. It's not gonna be specific trails, specific sidewalks, it's gonna be all together.
That's kind of too bad, because people always ask us, the River Valley Trail, where the trails are in the city, and now
Yeah,
we still don't.
Well, there's a map. There's a map.
we have the map.
there's a sidewalk on the trail map, so
Yeah.
we just didn't shoot the efficiencies separately.
Right,
That's okay.
so,
But
Thank you.
Appendix A has that's separation of these stuff.
okay.
And basically, a trail is classified as asphalt rather than sidewalk.
Concrete.
So,
Okay,
Okay.
So is Grandview considered to be a trail because it's asphalt?
that's why I classified it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's long, and I would consider that a trail.
good.
Did you do the trail by the county path and line?
Yes.
Enough. Thank you again. We'll be using this document for the next 8 to 12 years till we get it all corrected.
Great.
Unfortunately, that was the easy part, probably collecting the data. Now the hard part is to replace all of it.
Probably aside from the point here, I don't anticipate that's gonna be an issue, but I've done some of these where the answer to the community was, well, let's take the sidewalk out, it's in that bad shape. I don't anticipate that's what you guys are gonna do, so.
No.
Well, they do 7th Street and 135, you might.
Mhm. No, take it out? No,
No,
no. So,
but it's more enough, I don't have an opportunity.
oh. Well, thank you. If you want to stick around and listen to impact fees, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, you can, you don't have to stick around any longer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item B, initiate, well, okay, is there any
There's no
more
action.
discussion on item A?
No, I just think, once we do get the GIS data, we'll come back, and as a Public Works Committee, we'll have to sit down and make a plan how we want to approach 2020 sidewalk and curb replacement. A couple things to consider: our Highway 35 project coming through downtown in 2021. Do we want to do the curb and sidewalk replacement prior to that project coming in to get out of their way, type of thing? But I mean, it's like I said, it's a valuable document to the city. And it's something that we're gonna use quite heavily over the next 5 years when we, because I want to implement a pretty heavy sidewalk replacement program because we are behind, you know. There are a lot of deficiencies out there, and this report shows that. Now that we have the data and the exact locations, we can pinpoint certain areas where it makes sense to group things together and do a project in this quadrant, so on and so forth as we move forward, so.
Do we have, I guess the question is, can we, for 2020, we want, I think we'd want to start as soon as possible, start working on this, so
Absolutely.
we need to try to identify at least one area,
Yep.
perhaps.
We'll want to go out for bids for that
Building.
project probably in February.
I'm wondering, so budget-wise, are we better off doing it, setting some money aside, or trying to get into the budget in this fall, basically?
That was my thought is, you know, we want to, there's several areas where we need to increase the budget, that we think we do.
Yeah.
And this will give us some data, say, here's the plan for 2020, and it may be relatively small, but something that's focused and
Right.
high impact,
Right.
for sure.
You know, we do have, you know, monies in the CIP, sidewalk and curb replacement funds, $75,000 a year. And then any sidewalk replacement is assessed 50/50 to the property owner.
Right.
So you can stretch your dollars a little bit. So realistically,
Right.
it's about, you know, 150,000 total.
I think the DOT should have to pay for those retaining walls down by the bridge. They put them up.
The other thing to
and they're
consider,
falling down.
yeah, the other thing to consider too is, what was it, you know, in the operating budget, we don't have any monies appropriated for sidewalk replacement. It all comes out of the CIP. Nothing comes out of operating for
They pulled
sidewalks.
it a long time ago.
Oh, so it's all capital improvement?
It's all capital.
Okay.
All capital. It's $1,000 in each budget. That's
Yep.
it, for concrete.
Okay.
Okay, item B, initiate impact fees on new development for transportation needs.
So this is a discussion that staff has had internally. It's kind of driven by the utility department. Kip Peters reached out to a couple of companies that have done impact fees for other communities. And what an impact fee is it is a fee that the city is able to charge residential and commercial development. And right now, you know, Kip pays a sewer hookup, but he doesn't charge a water hookup fee. So he's losing some monies there. So anyways, he's kind of driving the study. And as part of it, there are other opportunities associated with an impact fee that the city can recuperate or generate some funds for other areas. And specific to public works, that would be transportation. Specifically, you know, bike and pedestrian accommodations. And so what a company does is basically a city can't just start imposing an impact fee because they want to impose an impact fee. There has to be research done, market analysis. It has to show to the state why you can charge an impact fee, where is the money that you collect, where is it going. It has to identify certain projects that the money's going to go towards. You have to justify why you're doing it. There was another thing too. And they also have to justify the rate that you're going to charge. So you can't just pick, we're going to charge $5,000 per, you know, new home that's going to be built to go towards transportation. The state limits you to what you can charge based upon, you know, your density, your population, your growth, so on and so forth. So basically what the city would do is they hire a company, and I gave you an example. This is one of the companies that came and spoke to us, Trilogy Consulting, and kind of go through the scope of work. But what they do is they come into the city and they do all this work, and they gather all this data, and they put this all in a program, and they look at the ordinances and the state statutes, what you can and can't do, so on and so forth. They put it on a report, and then they hand it over to the city and say, this is what you can charge for impact fees for water hookup, for sanitary, for park impact fees, for transportation fees, so on and so forth. There's even communities that even do a fire impact fee, a police impact fee, a library impact fee. But those are more, usually an impact fee is relegated to a system, a certain area. So, for example, Lee property, you can't charge from a transportation or a park impact fee. You can't charge them an impact fee and then use that money up in Lake Malibu or Grandview. It has to be specifically for that region. Now with KIP and utilities, they can charge an impact fee for water and sanitary and use it anywhere in the system because their system is integrated more. You know what I'm saying? The water demands from a new development in St. Croix Meadows is going to affect a lift station over in, off of Grandview, which is going to affect the plant, so on and so forth. So they're a little more easily justified that they can use their funds throughout the community, where a transportation or a park impact fee has to kind of be narrowed down to a certain development. And you can only charge new development, so the impact fee is only for new construction. So basically, I'm bringing forth tonight, if there are opportunities, and I know we've had discussions on Bike and Ped and Public Works Committee and Park Board and Council about some of our lack of pedestrian accommodations, trails, so on and so forth. And this is an opportunity for the city to maybe capture some revenue to put into our trails and sidewalks moving forward, especially in these newer developments like, Atwood, St. Croix Meadows, and who knows where the next annexation is going to come. So, I mean, it's up for discussion. It's we don't have to do it, but it's an option for us as a city moving forward. So
Are we going to become the driving force to get this through the council, or is it the?
It'll be a group effort. We would piggyback Kip, because Kip's doing it. He already brought this to his utility commission, and they're proceeding with the study. They're going to go with us or without us, because there's a need there in the utility side to do this study. So, I mean, it would be a joint effort.
Yeah. I read through all that they do, and what I'm surprised at is the fee being so low.
Well, that's only that portion.
So so it's for us.
That's just for the transportation
Yeah,
impact.
so transportation is 36, water is 32, sanitary is 34. The
Okay.
total was approximately 28. If everybody was doing it, fire, library, parks, so on and so forth.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I
Okay.
thought
This
the
was
same-
just for the
That's how it is.
transportation.
Yeah.
I should have added the. yeah.
That's better.
There was a
Because I
breakdown.
was looking at
That's why I
that and
was
said, wait a
kinda
minute.
No,
this is-
no.
This is not,
No, just specifically for the transportation, this is the cost.
I think it's an excellent idea. We need to look at it. We need to define where we can and where we can't, and what we have to have in place. They'll help us tell us what we have to have in place in order to justify.
Right.
Like you have to have a plan.
Yep, you have to have a
I think,
plan.
to say, here's where the trail's going to be.
Yep.
In order to justify collecting money for that.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So, I mean, if the committee, thinks it's a great idea, we would take the monies out of remaining funds from the Carmichael Road Corridor study to help cover the transportation portion of the study.
Yeah, I thought it was well worth it based on what we're getting. And I had the same thought. I was like, how could it be so?
Right?
I couldn't figure that out, but I think it's great. And then my only question was, that's a lot of data, so certain things we already know, I'm guessing, when I was reading through that. Do you know what percentage of what would be like new? Does that make any sense? Like, what they're looking for is new information we don't have, is what I'm trying to establish, right?
Yeah.
These are things we don't quite have our hands on. Some of it seemed pretty straightforward, like the square footage of the fire station or something. Like, we already know that. But
Yeah.
some of the other areas, what I'm trying to get at is that's new stuff that would be good for us to have.
Yes, and it would get the various committees to do some long-range planning as
Yeah.
well, with park facilities, transportation facilities, so on and so forth. So it would be new construction, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it makes sense then, too. Are you looking for a motion tonight, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have my packet on me, so I don't have the exact language. But you're looking for approval. I would move to approve the study by Trilogy.
Just like-
regarding public, regarding the transportation pieces? Is that what we're looking for?
Mhm.
With the reallocating funds from the Carmichael Road
Oh, thank you,
corridor study.
thank you, with reallocating.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 3,600?
368239.
Thank you.
I'll second that. I guess further discussion, the other thing that popped up was, as I was reading through that, was the timing.
Mhm.
It's going to be so intertwined with, because our comprehensive plan was mentioned more than once.
Yeah,
So, and that's, which is going to be under revision for the next year.
right.
When might this information be available? Would seem like they almost go hand in hand.
Yep, so, speaking with Kip, he wants to have something in place before the beginning of the construction season of 2020. So we want to have a completed impact fee study done by, let's just say January or February, so we can start to institute it for next year already.
Hopefully that's not a conflict with, if the comprehensive plan changes things significantly.
Yeah.
I kind of doubt it, but
Yeah.
it just concerned me, the intertwining.
Well, I mean, the comprehensive plan is going to be your, your long-term vision of the city, correct? And your impact fee study your impact fees are they're going to work hand in hand with future development, right? So you want to have an impact fee study done in place for when you do start to annex certain areas outside of the city, to incorporate how we're going to pay for new parks, how we're going to pay for trails in this development, how are we going to connect it to future, to existing trails, so on and so forth. So you want to have that study and those projects identified early on. But they do, like you said, Jim, they do kind of work hand in hand with one another.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And I would assume, that you guys are talking about this enough, you don't see a conflict with that at all?
No, and in fact, I know from the park standpoint, Kathy Monkitrick and Brenda Malinowski, our former finance director, both
Dedication.
has pushed the city to look into park impact fees moving forward, because right now we have parkland dedication funds, which are a little more limited on what we can use and where park impact fees are a little more universal and able to use for a wider range of amenities. And so we've been kind of guided or kind of, what do you want to say, told to look into this further. So, I mean, this is kind of perfect timing that Kip is having, kind of leading the charge on this. We're able to kind of just piggyback on him, like I said.
I think it totally makes sense to me to move ahead and find out where are our opportunities.
Yep.
Where can we improve?
Towards impact fees paid for the park equipment, getting the grant and paying for part of the grant for trails or the, stuff on Glen Road, it's not a trail.
Shoulders, wide shoulders.
Shoulder.
Mhm.
And it's also paying for the new bathroom facility, pavilion.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at, for example, the Lee property. If there was a transportation impact fee, we could use those monies for the trail to connect down to the school, the elementary school. I mean, there's just opportunities abound and it's not, we're not trying to, the fees aren't going to be astronomical. I mean, all of it's going to help, whether it's, and I'm not going to throw out numbers, but anything's going to help.
Right.
Better than nothing,
Right.
right?
I guess we just want to make them we don't want to de-incentivize developers, if that makes sense too.
Yep,
So it
absolutely.
doesn't sound like they're
Yep.
huge amounts of money, but things that would be helpful at a reasonable level, so.
Yep. Absolutely.
Any more discussion?
No, I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. New business, discussion on fall leaf collection program. I saw, and I asked you to put this on there because somewhere, and I have been going back trying to figure, I saw a reference to, we have this. And I said, where do we have this? How does that happen? So I asked Mike to at least take a look at this and
Yeah.
and
So
start
what,
thinking, and I have been being asked do we have a leaf collection spot, or when we have these windstorms go through and people are hauling the brush out in their little pickup trucks, where can we put this?
Yep, yep.
So,
I've been asked often as well. So to answer your question is, the city of Hudson does not have a designated brush or leaf drop-off site. And Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you've had one for a very long time.
10 years.
So what the city has done instead is they've gone to a curbside pickup system through advanced waste disposal, where residents can come in and they purchase a sticker for $1, and they're able to buy biodegradable bags, put the sticker on the bag, put it out at their curbsite, and then advanced disposal comes and removes their leaf or brush from their property. The other option that the resident has is advanced disposal actually has waste containers, similar to a garbage container, that I believe it's picked up every other week, that residents can pay. I think it's $98 or $100 a year, something like that. So that's the other option that residents have. Now, that really doesn't answer the question of what happens when a storm comes through, right? Because you're going to have a whole bunch more debris and that, so on and so forth. So I know the Urban Forestry Board is looking at, we're doing a strategic plan right now, and we're trying to identify areas where, or partnerships with North Hudson or some private commercial arborists where we could take, we could kind of partner with. Right now, if somebody calls in and says, we have a bunch of brush, we're directing them to a couple of local arborist yards where they do have brush disposal on site. But as of right now, the city doesn't have anything where a resident can bring their brush and leaves to. We internally utilize some property up in North Hudson, off Cratley. We have some storage facilities, and that's where we haul our sweepings to, and some demo material and black dirt, so on and so forth. The city internally, when a storm comes through, will utilize that site for their brush that falls down on the roads or something like that. But I mean, the space needed for a city site, I mean, I've worked in 2 communities that have had their own brush site. You need quite a bit of space, and for a community the size of Hudson, I mean, you're going to need a big area for that, because they get used. Absolutely, they get used by the residents, and they're appreciated. It's just a matter of, is that a need, and we would almost have to acquire some property to do that.
And does St. Croix County not have one as well? I thought I saw that in the packet.
Correct. They
There's
don't
nothing
have
in the
one as well.
county.
Right. No.
And Jim, what were you thinking when, were you thinking?
well, that's what, it was just, now what am I thinking about this? Okay, first thing is we probably need to communicate the options to the community in some way. Figure out how we do that as
It's
part
on the
of,
city website. It's on the
part of
county
MS4.
website.
Yeah, I know
They
it's
do
on,
mailings,
the county does mailings, we don't.
we don't.
And I don't know, I can't remember one from the county that talked about this.
Probably not.
Usually it's more
Maybe
about
we could
recycling
have,
and disposal.
well, I suppose everything's online nowadays. I'll say you could have Advanced do a flyer or an addition to their mailing, but people probably pay their bills online now.
Well,
That's,
they usually are supposed to do that too, so
yeah.
it's part of their contract to do that, so.
It might be good to contact the local paper and have a little piece in there, just as the fall gets coming
The
up.
fall, yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
With reminding them about
Yep.
especially if you move into town, you don't really know about where to buy the little, county marker or whatever, city hall, where to buy the tags and things like that, so
Yeah,
it might be good to have
yeah,
something.
it took me 2 years to find that out.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long,
And I think
right?
that's in their contract though too, that I think they do have to put that in the paper, in the newspaper, but we can double check it.
Yeah,
you know.
I
I think we could wrap it up with like MS4 and with the fall coming up, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Advance puts out they put out a recyclable thing every year.
Mhm.
Right.
And need to have them do something around, what do you call it? Well, this is not recyclable, it's disposable, it's
Yard waste.
yard
yeah.
waste. If there was, put a little pressure on them to
Yeah.
to step up and help us here,
Right.
because they can do the mailing probably easier than we can.
Yeah, and I did look into it a little bit. I mean, when they do collect, yard waste, whether it's, grass or leaves or, garden stuff or branches, they do take that off-site and they do reuse and recycle a majority of that material either by mulching it or turning it into compost and probably reselling it. But at least, it's not just going to a landfill.
Right.
So they do have a environmentally friendly program in place to utilize those materials that they do collect.
The cost per bag isn't high, but bagging leaves and like a laurel,
Right.
I can't imagine what it would cost for some of those areas to have to bag all those leaves.
Hundreds of bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
And to get advanced disposal in gear to pick up that many
Right.
bags would be
Yeah.
another story.
Right.
I wonder if it's, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say, Jim, have you had a lot of, you've had some people call and contact you, but is there an overwhelming, kind of push for the city to look for that type of facility? A brush site and compost site, or few and far between, or?
This is probably like the number one or number two issue that I hear about, but it's very cyclical. When we get a windstorm,
Yeah.
you're going to get the questions.
Yeah.
Come fall, we'll probably get some questions. What do I do with my leaves?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I know in the
scheme of things, it's not big, but when I start putting it in with MS4, then it's important for us to be more proactive about this. It's now a responsibility,
Yeah.
and we need to look at how responsible do we want to be around this. That's one of the things we've always said about MS4. We can be responsible at this level, or we can be responsible at this level, and have much more impact. And
I'm wondering I wonder if we could approach the county maybe and see if there's, if we're so strapped for land, right, and we need this area, I wonder if a county, some kind of site in St. Croix County might be the way to go, that other folks could use too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's exactly who to talk to.
Doesn't hurt
but-
to ask, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Well, the
know.
county is the responsible unit that all the municipalities report to. And so we estimate our estimated cost for next year annually. So if you want to incorporate something like that into the plan, then, you'd have to meet with them and talk with them, and then obviously budget for that. It's not, all totally reimbursable anymore, so the city would have to, pay a large portion of that. Do you know what the percentage was? We were trying to figure that out, but it used to be 100%, but now it's gone down. But I'm sure she would come and talk.
What she's referring to is the county offers incentives to
Right.
local municipalities for recycling, and so the city would, let's just say the city would buy 10 recycling containers. They would submit that to the county, and the county would reimburse, half the cost of those containers. But the city used to get like $50,000 a year or something like that at one point, but now we barely get $5,000 a year for any recycling incentives.
And that was, we used to do the billing. So we would do the billing for the garbage and refuse. So we were able to take a portion of that for the recycling. And then so that's how we were able to take every household. So then as the years went on, then we turned it over to advanced disposal or to the garbage company to take it on because it was just too much for the city to handle. And then part of our fall leaf collection, we would get dumpsters and we'd have a site and people could bring them. But of course that was labor intensive and it was very expensive. I think we paid $15,000 just for that service, for people. And so there's people that live in apartments, they don't have any leaves, there's just, it's kind of, it didn't go over well. So we quit doing that, so, because the reimbursement was just nothing.
Right.
So.
And under the new system, is that seem adequate outside of the storm thing that you're thinking about? Like, is there a sense of, in the fall, I'm wondering, is there a lot of like people complaining that they want to have a place to,
Not really, you
put
know, I
in,
just
or
think
is
that
it-
it's, people have just gotten so used to it, you
Yeah.
know, that you're gonna have some of the older parts of town that have a lot of leaves, they're gonna, you know, obviously, they're more upset because they've got to buy $50 worth of tags to
Right.
get rid of their leaves, but,
Or they push them off into the street.
yeah, and we don't have that much of it.
Yeah, we have a lot of that.
Well, then.
I
somebody needs to be
I
out
can
of
take
the-
you places.
No,
Wow.
they can report it, you can call the police and they'll go.
The other thing that,
violation.
you know, other cities are doing is curb, what do you say, leaf vacuuming. So they'll buy units where, and they coordinate with the residents. We're picking up blocks from Division to Vine, from First to Sixth on Monday, and then we go this, and they have these units where they come by and they just vac them up. People rake their leaves out in the curb. The next morning, you're out there vacuuming them up, and then you go to the next part, and then you go to the next part. You know, other communities do that as well as for leaf collection on a wider scale, outside of your, you know, a house that only has a couple trees where, you know, you're only raking in 12 bags, but like you said, you get in these other parts of the city where you have 100, 200 bags of leaves. So, I mean, that's another option as well, but then you have to invest in the equipment to do that, and
right,
And then you have to pay to get rid of it.
they pay your, so, I mean, it's,
right.
you too.
But we have, you know, always wanted the county to come up with a compost site. So if they would come up with that and all the municipalities would contribute towards that, you know, that'd be great. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be in the city of Hudson, it could be in
Right.
anywhere in the county.
That's what I'm thinking, it would be
Yeah.
like a county, it'd be county something.
We have a new recycling coordinator. We
Yeah, I
can
remember.
contact her and, you know, maybe talk to her about.
That's certainly something we should look at,
Mhm.
if there was just a site
Mhm,
Right,
where people could haul to. A lot of people seem to be quite willing to do that, but
mhm.
right.
Yeah, right now, they really don't have a convenient option,
lots of pickup trucks, so.
you know.
No, can be.
Then would you know who to talk to with the county
Yes.
about that?
Very well. We just turned in our estimated cost for next year, so
Oh, you did, okay.
obviously we're not buying anything big. So, yeah, we'll talk, because we were gonna have her
Okay.
come down.
I think
and-
the other thing would be to chat with Advance and see what kind of communication are they gonna put out around this? That, you know, we've got this MS4 project where we have to be more responsible about what goes down the gutter. And right now, they are
Right.
our only city-supported, that's the wrong word, city-backed, so,
Yeah.
city-involved option that we have.
Right.
So we should at least get that communicated. That's out there, that's easy, it's doable. People with the lesser amounts can certainly use that.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
I'm not sure what else we can, and then we have to, your idea about the newspaper
Yep,
communication, this would be a time to start that.
Yep, absolutely.
We need to get you out there get your face out there again.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Discussion on capital improvement planning for street repairs.
Yeah, so Jim had requested us just do kind of a brief overview of, kind of just get a general sense of where we're at with street repairs. And Whistler actually has a pavement analysis tool, and this is the graph, and we'll just kind of walk through this document I put together this afternoon. It kind of gives you just a general sense. It's not, you know, these are approximate numbers that you're going to see. Keep in mind that, you know, on the first page, it says based on 73.79 miles of rated roadways. Well, you know, we're closer to 80 miles. They must not have updated their database recently. So that's changed. And then these numbers that you're going to see in here, they're only related to pavement. They're not related to curb and gutter. So keep that in mind as well. So these are just pavement numbers. So this first graph just gives you a general sense of, you know, the condition frequency of our roads. So, you know, it goes back to the PACER rating. So PACER rating, you rate a road from 1 up to 10. 1s are bad, 10 being brand new, okay? So within that, from 1 to 4, you're doing capital projects. 1s and 2s are generally complete reconstruction. 3s are like a pulverize. 4 is a mill and overlay. But those are going to be your high dollar expenses, okay? 1 to 4, capital projects. From 5 to 8, those are going to be your maintenance projects, seal coating, crack filling, spray patching, GSB 88, microsurfacing, slurry seal. Those are going to be maintenance things, okay? Those are going to be less expensive. So you kind of have two categories. You have your capital costs, complete reconstructs, and you have your maintenance. On a road that's a 9 to 10, you're typically not doing any treatments on those. You start crack filling around a pacer rating of 8. You will do a 9 maybe, but typically it's around an 8. So as you see on this graph, a majority of our roads, 56% of them, fall within the 5 to 6 to range. So that's a maintenance range. The next highest is 3 to 4. That's going to be your pulverize or your mill and overlay, and so on and so forth. You can see on the graph. Okay, is there everybody following? Mm-hmm. Okay. Flip the page. So based upon those numbers and the frequency, we have approximately 21.21 miles of capital costs. Those are your mill and overlay, pulverize, complete reconstruct, at about $8 million. Okay, you go over the maintenance, we have about 45 miles of roads that need to be maintained based upon our pacer ratings at about 1.5 million. Okay? Everybody following with that?
Yep.
Okay. So in general, we have approximately 8, 9, 9.5, $10 million worth of, monies that could be put into roadways to bring them up to 8s, 9s, and 10s. Question, Jim?
I assume you're going to get into,
Budget?
this is, yeah.
Yeah,
budget.
we'll get into budget. Okay, so flip the page. And this gets kind of small. Hopefully you can read it. If not, ask a lot of questions. So this is, every year in the CIP, we budget $230,000 to go towards road maintenance. Okay, and then outside of that, we've typically put in a CIP a road reconstruct project. So Hanley, for example, Grandview, for example, Vine Street in 2016, Vine Street this year. Next year, we're going to be doing industrial. So, outside of the 230, we'll also budget,
It was usually 400.
400,
Yeah,
okay.
so it was-
So, $230,000 for road maintenance. The condition before the plan is in the upper left, and then you can see the condition after the plan. So, let me take a step back. So this plan in Whistler, you can project out 5 years. Okay? So in year 1, I put 230,000. Year 2, I put 230,000, 230,000, 230,000, 230,000 through a 5-year plan. Okay? So if we were to stick in $230,000 like we have been doing, it gives you the condition before the plan and then a condition after the plan. So you can see that a majority of the money went towards, your 5s and 6s, bringing them up to a 7 and 8. You drastically reduce the percentage of your 5 and 6.
Right.
You increase your 7 and 8s, okay? And from, a lot of the trainings that I go to, what they stress is, reconstructs and capital projects are very expensive, whereas maintenance is a lot less, of course.
Yep.
And they always stress that treat the best, replace the rest. So a lot of your maintenance dollars you want to put in towards your 5, 6, and 7s to keep them, because there is a deterioration curve. And after, a 12-year, it basically stays kind of level, through years 7, 8, 9. And if you don't get a treatment out there, she drops off in a hurry, and then you're going to reconstruct in, short time. So they say put your monies towards the maintenance to extend that life and just keep that curve kind of keep playing it out. So in the bottom graph here shows, the blue column, it says needs prior to the 5-year plan. So there's a total need of $9.5 million. The 5-year plan expenditures was about 1.1. So that's $230,000 for 5 years. And then your backlogs and needs is your red column after the 5-year plan. is at $9.5 million. So you basically spent $1.1 million for 5 years, that 5-year stretch, and you really didn't gain anything. You're right back at square one. Okay? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Turn the page. So you can project, you can put different budgets in, you can kind of play around with the numbers. So the next two, I put in a $500,000 road maintenance budget, and then the final page, I put in $1 million road maintenance budget. And you can kind of just see how
Wow.
it differentiates. You know, a $500,000 road budget, just go down to the bottom. I mean, you spend $2.5 million over 5 years, but you're also reducing your backlog. You're actually gaining some ground there, right? Okay. So then you go to the $1 million, the last page, and you're making significantly more gains on your road system. So, I mean, when it comes time to budgeting for this, I mean, this is a great tool that we can use as a Public Works Committee, that I can use speaking to the council and put some, you know, get some numbers behind. You know, everybody says we have bad roads, right? Well, what is it gonna take to repair them? What's it gonna take to replace them? This is actually kind of gives you some numbers behind that and just say, hey, you know, this is how much we're gonna have to spend every year to stay on top of our roads, because at $230,000, we're not gaining.
Right.
Yeah, you're just,
Well, it's such a small budget, I mean, a town our size should have a higher budget for its
No.
roads.
In fact, they did a case study at my last training, City of Portage. They have 50 miles of roads, and they spend $500,000 every year, where we have 80 miles of roads and we spend $250,000 or $230,000.
Right.
So I mean, it puts into perspective what other communities are doing. But I mean, it's like I said, it's a great tool. And Jim, if you ever want to come up to the office and we can throw numbers around, but I know the bond is set for next year for the same number, but in 2021 we're going to definitely want to take a hard look at increasing our, you know, expenditures.
That number's stayed the same for, I want to say, I think it was like at least 12 years.
that was one of the questions
And
I
it was
had.
actually-
How long
and
have
it-
we been at this level?
would have to
I
double
think
check,
that's,
but it was used something like that earlier when
if you just did a study of dollars, the
Directors.
value of that
two directors before
$230,000
Tom, so-
Yeah.
12 years ago versus today, it's
Oh.
probably half
Right.
that or less. So,
And that's kind of how he had kind of done it at the time when he did it and set it up, and they just kind of continue to keep going with it.
so now we're in a $9 million hole. So,
And is it all capital improvement money? Or
This is all-
is
it's all
there
maintenance.
operating, what's in?
so maintenance.
No,
It's all our operating.
we don't have anything. Well, the only thing that we have in operating is about $15,000 for spray patch materials that we do in-house.
That's it.
That's it.
I see.
The rest of it's capital.
Okay.
The spray patching, get-
Well, this is great. I mean, it shows I think the concern that we've had.
Yeah.
Now it adds some,
And what's great about the program is I can do, like I said, I put the numbers in a 5-year budget, year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I say create plan or create report, and Whistler will spit out basically an Excel spreadsheet. You should be doing this to this road, this to this road, this to this road, this to this road, and it just spits it all out just like that. So then when it comes time to bidding, I mean, we have everything that we want to do right there, and we just follow the 5-year plan out. It's fantastic. It's a great tool. So you don't have to sit there and they're weighing. Whistler has, and I don't want to get too deep in it, but they have formulas set up where they weigh maintenance and they weigh reconstruction, and they put your monies that are going to make the road system last the longest. They're not going to be. You're not throwing your money down the drain, is what I'm trying to say. You know, there are systems and there's formulas in place that put those monies in those areas where where it's going to make the best impact, get the best bang for your buck. So.
It sounds excellent. I mean, and the big picture is we should be getting, you know, with all the developments and whatnot coming up, we should be financially better off as a city. So there should be room to, budget-wise, to make improvements
Yeah.
in this kind of spending too,
Right.
so.
I think the question this brings to mind is that there's a whole raft of pieces of the Public Works budget that need to be addressed, that have been inadequately funded, and we need to take a look at the, not just, this is a great one, I mean, this is the biggest piece for sure.
Yeah.
But, and the one that most people recognize, but there are all other kinds of things like the snow rule, storm ponds, things that are,
Yeah.
that are gonna start cropping up now, that we need to be looking at. Some, I don't know if I'd be overload or not to present this to the council, at one time, say, here are the pieces, but somehow we need to get an education process going on here about the Public Works.
Yep. Well, it's the
What's
sidewalks.
changing.
It's what we heard earlier with the
Right.
sidewalks and
Right.
ped ramps and pedestrian accommodations
Right.
and the road. I mean, it's all part of
It's
it.
part of it's aging,
Yep.
part of it's been austerity, part of it's
Yeah.
just not keeping up with the growth. I guess those are maybe the three elements that we could talk about.
Yeah.
And so some of it's totally blameless.
Right.
It ages.
Yep.
Stuff gets old, it breaks down.
The price to repair and maintain keeps going up, and you don't.
Right.
You're not following
Right.
that. You're correlating to that increase in price.
Well, this is probably the most important one right here, is to start, and I don't know if there's any way that we can get any kind of funding to increase next year 10%.
Well, we got, so, a good thing next year is we have 230,000 in our maintenance, and then we also have 400,000 in the capital to mill and overlay industrial. So, I mean, that's $630,000 that'll be going back into the road. But then that next bond cycle, we're definitely gonna wanna make a push to increase our road maintenance portion of it. Cause I think we get probably 720,000 in local transportation aid back from the state, I believe.
I thought it was more than
Yeah, it's about that.
Yeah, okay.
I can never figure that out.
Yeah,
I'm glad you can.
yep.
Okay,
So, yeah,
well, this is perfect.
yep.
Yeah.
It's
Gives you an
exactly-
idea, right?
Wow, and I'm impressed. The municipality has actually had a couple articles about using the Whistler program.
Mhm.
And I scanned through it, but
Yeah,
way more than I wanted to know. But it sounds like you're actually applying that, and that's perfect.
Good.
Because I love the fact that you can now say, here are the priorities, here are the roads,
great.
and we have a list.
Yeah,
It's based on the ratings that have been given.
yep.
Okay. I think there needs to be some action on this, and that's we need to bring this in front of the council. I think as an example.
We can certainly during, budget work, during our work session, we can introduce the idea. I think that'd be an appropriate time to do that and just say,
Probably.
that would probably be the best, just to say, hey, heads up. I know Randy has spoken to increasing some of the maintenance items for roads, previously. So, I mean, I think as a general council, there is consensus that, the system is aging, it is starting to fail. We need to spend more monies on our road system.
What I like about it, and that you now can have a plan.
Right.
This is the impact,
Right.
and here are the streets that we would, if we started this next year,
Yep.
here's where we would start applying that money.
Yeah, you could, you could start by increasing the operating and taking, like
Yeah.
next year, because obviously you're kind of locked in for the capital. But if you took the operating and tried to increase something from street maintenance or curbing and sidewalks that could be done contractually, so.
There's a lot of data now too, so
Materials.
that's gonna help.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Should you just count them?
So the action item there is that we'll present this during the budget discussion.
Yep.
We need to look to the future, and part of the, probably doesn't have a fit in the comprehensive plan other than as a discussion, but.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, project update. Do we have anybody coming in here at 7? Are we,
I don't
No,
think
I
so.
don't
I think
think so.
we're so.
okay.
I'll
we
fire-
should be able to get
yeah,
done by
I'll
then.
fire through these. So we gotta have 11 project updates in the Public Works Department. I'll rifle these off, and if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. 2019 street maintenance, Aztec was in here, and they applied the GSB 88 application to Hudson Meadows and Heritage Greens last week. They also completed the crack filling portion of the project, so they have completed both portions and are out of town now. So a lot sooner than we have had in the past to actually get it done before Labor Day. It's like,
Big mess.
is it incredible? They made a big mess
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
on
And it
the
ended up going down the drains.
on the crack filling portion,
Yes,
the blowing,
It always
the
does.
routing.
yeah, they,
Can hope that.
there was some attempt to sweep it up, we could see that.
Yep.
But they missed a lot of it. The gutters were full on Grandview,
Sure.
and then it washed down in the storm that weekend.
Okay.
So, that was a big no-no.
Yeah.
Our driveway to our little section there, I mean, it had a 4-foot section like that was
Yeah.
just loaded with, we had tracks up our driveway and.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so it, there was not, that part of it was, I don't know who was responsible for that. I would assume they would
They
be.
were responsible to kick it off, and then we were gonna let the crack filling set because we didn't want it. We didn't want to
Oh, yeah.
sweep over it
Yeah,
and
right.
tear it all up.
But it should have been swept before they did it. They-
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It was all, they were crack filling, and I could see the crap was there,
Mm-hmm.
right in front of our place, so.
Okay. All right.
I can be an eyewitness for you on that one, that they did it.
Yeah.
They didn't do a good, I don't understand it, why they wouldn't do a cleanup job before they would just come in with they just blew it away.
It was
Sure.
really, really bad.
It was, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
which-
saw, there were some other streets that were,
Okay.
saw same evidence.
Okay. Okay. We'll have to, for next year, we'll just have to put in the spec that prior to any crack filling material being placed, routing must be swept up or something like that, where we can
Yeah.
require them in the spec to do that
Right.
in the contract. Walnut Street bridge repairs, so the pool level is at 676, and we're waiting for it to go down 1 more foot to 675, and then at that time, we'll be able to complete the last portion of that project, which has been 2 years in the making. So I got my fingers crossed that the river's actually gonna reach that normal pool level, and we're able to get in there and finish that project and close it out, because there's some grant monies tied to that, that we're looking to receive for other projects. Vine Street Improvement Project, striping was done last week, Thursday and Friday. They gotta do a little bit here tomorrow. Punch list items tomorrow as well, and then they're gonna open that up on Wednesday, is what I had heard today. So Wednesday, Vine Street will be open. Hagan Street Trail, that project has been wrapped up. Restoration work and seed has been placed on the side. I think it turned out really well. I'm pleased with the south portion of the trail where it kind of turns along Hanley, down Hanley. So if you're going south on the trail, it used to just stop, dead end. We actually had them turn it and put a pedestrian ramp to make them go down Hanley. And the thought is to do an on-street bike trail to Industrial. So I'm really pleased with how that turned out.
How wide is that?
The trail, kept it at 8.
Okay, so you didn't like.
I didn't widen it to 10. Nope. Street light replacement project on Stage Line. So council approved Neo Electric, low bid to perform that work. I haven't heard if,
No, we're still
it's all,
waiting
it all,
on it.
we haven't received the light poles in yet from SAPCO. So as soon as we get them in, we'll have to schedule a Neo to complete that project here this fall. Storm sewer repair project, Albrightson was the low bid. They are going to be starting that project the Tuesday after Labor Day, which would be the 3rd. They're going to start on Chestnut. So, and that's probably, that entire project will probably take them 3 to 4 weeks to do all the repairs that we had in the plans. Cooley Road retaining wall, that project is wrapping up. They're pouring sidewalk here. Looks like they have it formed up, so I'm assuming they'll pour it this week. So we'll close that project out as well. Had some issues with the infiltration from the spring, and we were able to put in a couple systems, a primary collection system and a backup system to collect that water. And we have it piped into a manhole right next to it. So Instead of the water seeping behind the retaining wall, it's being directed right into the manhole, so,
Coming down, collecting behind the wall and running it underneath the sidewalk and into
no, so we were able to capture it before it got, it, so we basically put, it's, what do you want to say? It's a manhole. And then around the manhole, we put a bunch of drain tile and crushed rock. So any water that's seeping out of the hillside is being caught by that drain tile and be directed right into the adjacent manhole. And then on top of that, so then there's the manhole, there's two manholes. So the upper manhole, they poured a concrete swale to collect any surface water, and they directed it right into that manhole to disperse into it. Like I said, we have a couple, fail safes to hopefully alleviate some of that water pressure that we
Yeah,
have.
there was some concern on the council about,
Continue failure.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
City Hall window replacement, that's scheduled for September 16th. They're still making the windows. So that'll happen this fall as well. And then the 3 LOEs for 11th Street Bridge expansion, Vine Street safety study, preliminary options, and then the Carmichael Road concept plan. You're both aware that the council approved those LOEs with SEH to do preliminary design work on a number of those projects. So lots going on.
For sure.
Somewhere along the line on those last 3 LEs,
Yep.
I'd like to see that bike ped be involved in at least reviewing probably the early concepts around what that was. To me, that's one of their values.
Yep.
Is that they can take a look at this strictly from that perspective. They don't have to look at it from cost or anything. So here's what would be safe. And here's what would, so we need that.
What was that, Jeff?
That the bike ped would be looking at these projects from, here's what would be safe from a bike ped perspective, and provide that kind of input.
Absolutely. That's all I got.
Okay. Items for future agendas.
Oh, well, if we can get the information from the county or whatnot, we can circle back. I don't know if that needs to be next meeting, but somewhere down the line. This, is the stairs on, that go up the Prospect, is that kind of on hold from,
Oh, so that did go to public safety,
okay,
and from public safety, they recommended that the stairs go in the original location or to complete the sidewalk on the east side of 3rd Street up to the well house.
east side of,
Yeah.
So it'd be
yeah, as I-
continuing the sidewalk that where it ends, going all the ways up and around the corner. So,
Yeah, so that was their recommendation, that either one of those two options they would support.
either one is gonna be very expensive,
right.
so.
Do you like where it originally was, more than where we had moved it to?
They like it because of the controlled intersection down here, people being able to cross safer at the 3-way stop compared to a crosswalk.
No, I get that. I mean, remember we had looked at
Yeah,
2 of those up there on the hill?
yeah.
So just so I'm accurate, the one down the hill is what they like at the corner?
All the way down to the original stair, where the old stairway is.
Okay,
Mhm.
That's right.
Yep,
I get that. Okay, I was mixing it up with the 2 that we had talked about
Yep,
before.
no.
Okay,
they don't want the crosswalk up there, they feel
Yeah.
there's too much vision impairment coming around that corner.
I can understand that,
And there's a
yeah.
lot of concern with that, so.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Okay.
Who's got the ball on this now?
It'll
Parks.
just probably go back to parks, and they'll put in the CIP for the upcoming years.
Yeah.
Kind of decide,
We'll have to,
you know,
yeah, I mean,
It-
you're looking at, I don't know,
it was
$150,000 to $200,000 now.
think.
So, I mean,
Probably even more.
it's a CIP item, it's a prioritizing of, are there other things at that price that you're looking to do rather than stairs? So, I mean, goes back on the shelf.
Mhm.
Okay. There's a couple, I guess I'm going to ask you, Mike, is how many of these things can you continue to handle and still do your job? But, and that's, you know, we have snow removal, ordinance needs to be rewritten, and we've done some work on that.
Yep.
That's probably a priority now with,
Yeah,
now
coming
that
up.
we're going to be thinking about
We
winter.
could put that on the next agenda, update or review current snow ordinance.
There were
You
some
know,
other, there's some other things that are hanging out there, they're not crisis ones. Snow removal probably is.
Right.
It's a critical item at this point, but retaining walls,
Policy.
storm ponds,
Yep.
policies, I don't think we've finished those. I
Nope.
can't keep track of
No,
everything we finished. And then the third one that came up during this discussion this morning, or today, was crosswalk markings.
mhm,
We don't have a consistent policy
No, we don't.
that I'm aware of around that.
Nope.
And I think of up on top of the hill.
mhm.
On the west side, sorry, on the south side, the crosswalks are marked by the people, I believe, by the people who, the private individuals who own the, you know, businesses own the property. On the north side, they're not.
I thought we talked about this.
We've talked about it, but
No,
nothing's,
I mean, we talked about it because of the jurisdictions, I believe. I can look, we can look. Something about,
yeah, I've not,
I
I
kind of
can
remember
remember a
that.
discussion
I'll
a
look
year
and
or
see if
two
I can
ago,
find it. Mhm.
but I don't know how, I don't recall any definition
Yeah,
about
I can't-
that. We need clarity on that, because it
Right.
looks to me like, what's the difference between the two sides? You know,
Right.
they're both, they have private driveways crossing public sidewalks,
Mhm.
walkways. So there's something different about that, basically,
I'll
that,
look and see what I can find.
I don't know if we just, who knows, whatever the agreement was at that point in time, but,
Yeah.
I
So-
think that's what it was. There was an agreement.
We'll look.
but that's, you know, that would be just a first look at that. I don't know. Probably something we would need to have in place springtime next year to, as you start looking at,
Yeah. That's, I mean, you heard me talk about, you know, painting crosswalks. We budget, was it $15,000 this year for sidewalk, or crosswalk paint and curb paint? And we already went through that budget. You know, and we still have a month and a half of decent painting weather, and we're basically having to pull the guys and say, we have no more money left to paint anymore. So I mean, that's something for the budget, you know, that's an operating cost that we may want to look at increasing here, you know, by a few dollars to at least get through, you know, mid-September, and then the guys, you know, can transition to kind of some fall projects. But I mean, and we didn't even, if you think about it, we didn't really start painting until June, just because of the spring that we had and the snow melt and so on and so forth. So I mean, it was pretty condensed painting season, so they got a lot done and they can do a lot, but we need the money to purchase the paint. You know,
Yeah.
so.
how creative can you get?
Now, we've already
Yeah, we
kind
have
of,
been
we've
creative.
already.
All the creative
trust
stuff,
me.
do we need to go
I'm
ask for
still
some?
painting, put it that way.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna try
We
and
need
get
to ask
through
for
it.
some money out of the
No,
undesignated funds.
Yeah,
No.
we'll try and
I don't think so.
move some monies around, keep painting for a couple more weeks. So,
I assume we're prioritized around things like schools and,
that's what they have been
And that-
doing the last week and a half.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
okay?
Move to adjourn?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for your work, Mike.